gender and gender preferences, as it were, gender preferences. I think that's the word to use, as it were. And being a keen political analyst and related to a very strong political family in Nigeria, and also her passion for the nation and her passion for good governance, and her passion for seeing things go right. We thought it would be nice to have my sister, Mrs. Julie Odigie-Oyegun, on the platform. My dear sister, thank you very much once again. And
thank you very much. My pastor and my brother, thanks a lot. It's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe you can start, first of all, by telling us a little bit of your journey and how you finally found yourself managing, as it were, diversity in a place as institutionalized as the World Bank. Maybe that would be a good place to start.
Well, I'm the daughter of a man who was always on the side of the underdog. So my father, I was born in England, and my father was always up in arms, you know, always very vociferous on behalf of the underdog, you know, who's missing, you know, who's getting, you know, maltreated, you know, who isn't it working for? So I grew up in that kind of a tradition. He was a firstborn, as was my mother. And it's something that I discovered later wasn't typical. They looked out for every member of their families, you know, regardless of mother, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of like come from a tradition within the family of inclusiveness. I mean, everybody grew up in our house. Everybody came and went, passed through. And my godparents were Igbo and Irish. So, and that tradition, that tendency runs through all of us. I'm the first of 8 children. So my parents were, you know, progressive, inclusive. There was room for everyone. And so I grew up in that kind of, with that kind of an ethos. And so, you know, going into diversity, to be honest, was almost a non sequitur. I started out with gender, women in development, women in management, women in politics, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously used all the UN tools and statutes. I found myself, I won a scholarship, a Chevening scholarship to study gender and development in the UK. I think this was in 1993. I'm severely dated. So this was in 1993. And I had a great time doing that. And I wrote about the human rights of women in terms of gender and development. And I guess the rest you could say is history. I went from there to the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, and then they sent me to South Africa to work on gender issues in the new South Africa in 1994. So here you see somebody who actually had dinner with Mandela, who has sat in meetings with Mbeki, you know, so I've had a great time. From that first job in South Africa with the Reconstruction and Development Program, where we ran a very interesting piece of research on what do women want. Fascinating piece of work that showed us the differences actually amongst women, you know, rural and urban, north, south, literate and illiterate, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, it was an eye-opener. I think at the cognitive level, you always know that there are differences amongst, you know, women, you know, it's class, et cetera, et cetera. Just being a woman is not going to make you identify with every other woman under the sun. And so that was a very interesting piece of, if you like, experience along the trajectory. I went to the University of the Western Cape to teach gender and development, having worked with the RDP. Then I went into human rights. I worked with the Human Rights Institute of South Africa, Southern Africa at the time. Did some work in Zimbabwe, some work in Namibia, and then went to Cape Town to work at the University of the Western Cape to teach gender and development. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years. Left there as Deputy Vice Chancellor for Human Resources and Services, and then went to Geneva to work with the High Commission for Refugees in 2000, working on their gender issues within the organization. So I went from HR to HR. It's funny how these things will happen to you. I was very interested in labor law when I was at the University of Lagos, and it came in very handy during my professional life in Nigeria, and all that translated into some of the stuff that I did in South Africa, of course, and then of course subsequently at the University of the High Commission for Refugees. I spent 2 years at the High Commission for Refugees, just under 24 months, and then I moved to the World Bank as director for their full diversity program. And one of the reasons why I left UNHCR was because we seemed not able to include race and other axes of segmentation along, the lines of that spectrum of identity. What are the things that distinguish us? It's not just gender, it's so many other things, particularly in a refugee situation. So in that context, and I had wanted them to expand the program to diversity, and they weren't quite ready to do that at the time. And then this offer came from the World Bank, so I went to the World Bank and ran this great program, very exciting program, for about 12 years before I came back home in 2013. So I guess that's my story in terms of how did I get here? I wonder sometimes myself.
Amazing. And that's quite a lot of experience packed into the whole thing. Coming back home to Nigeria, we're speaking on the subject diversity defines Nigeria. Diversity defines Nigeria. What are the typical, from your experience and from your association, diversity issues that we have in Nigeria, and how do they compare to diversity issues all over the world and in other places that you have been to?
Well, I think the first thing that strikes anyone, Nigerians and others, is that there are a lot of us. There's a lot of Nigerians, and we're everywhere. And there are all kinds of Nigerians. So we're a very big country made up of very many nations, and we're all over the world. Okay, so I mean, any which way you want to cut diversity when it comes to Nigeria, it's a defining factor. I don't think you can talk about Nigeria and not bear in mind, and this is at the forefront of your mind, how absolutely diverse we are as a country. I mean, I was looking at some statistics today, and there are, well, last count, 212 million of us, and this is across, well, we're all over the world, as I said, but our land space is 923,768 square kilometers. We're the 7th largest population in the world, 50% urban. We've got 250 ethnic groups, about 500 languages, if you don't mind. 30% of us appear to be Hausa, 15.5% Yoruba, and a 15.2% Igbo, and of course, they're the minorities. 43% of us, a few years ago, were between the ages of 0 and 14, okay? Islam, 45%, Christian, 45%, indigenous religions, 10%. Lingua franca, as far as I'm concerned, is pidgin. There's one language you can speak to any Nigerian anywhere and expect to be understood. It's pidgin English. So even though in our constitution, it's, the English language, but frankly, the thing that we all understand that makes us one, and it's a very unique kind of pidgin. That's, I think, our lingua franca. The under 15s as of 2010 made up 44% of our entire population. 53.2% were between the ages of 15 and 65. So, this is a country with a big chunk of people in its middle. We have a demographic bulge of very young people from all over the country, most of whom have not had the advantage of a good, strong education. Good, reliable healthcare, et cetera. So our diversity is compounded by lack. And so I think when we talk about, tribalism and this and that, frankly, in my view, what's underlying it, what's running through our difficulties is diversity and lack. And it's that, very difficult twinning that I think defines us as a country, even now.
Yeah, some people have been saying that they think that Nigeria might have been a mistake. Nigeria may have been a creation of the British for their own convenience. Who makes up Nigeria anyway? Cameroon used to be part of us. Somebody has appeared on this program and said maybe we should also annex Niger, annex Togo, annex Republic of Benin, and make one big whole huge country, and so on and so forth. A lot of agitations, IPOB on one side, saying that there must be a Republic of Biafra, Afenifere, and the Yoruba people say they want the Odua or the Oduduwa nation, and so on and so forth. Our people from the South wanting some more space and some more recognition. And at the time, even the Arewa and the Northerners threatened to secede from Nigeria, and that this mishmash and this place is just not working, and they don't see it working. What's your opinion?
You know, I'm a pastor's wife, and so I must share with you a little anecdote. So years ago, I forget exactly when, I was sitting with a young wife who was very upset. She said, "Well, she's filed for a divorce, and that's it." And you know, in my heart, I was wondering, my God, what do you say to this young woman? And then a peace came over me, and I heard myself saying to her, "Well, let's drink to that. Here you are on the verge of breaking up your family, leaving your husband, tearing up your marriage certificate. We should celebrate." And she started crying. And obviously, they're still married today. Okay, so my point is this. We would not be Nigeria if we were not all part of Nigeria. And I think the challenge for us is for us to learn how to be Nigerians together. I think that's the issue. I mean, when we say we, who would be missing and we would still be Nigeria, right? Just close your eyes and try to imagine, who is it that wouldn't be in this country tomorrow and we would still be Nigeria? This incredibly complex, difficult, almost unmanageable country that is full of brilliant, resilient, some of the most extraordinary people on God's earth. Who would we be if even one of us, in terms of our very diverse ethnicity, just 250 ethnic groups, 500 or so languages, who would we be if we were not all part of this thing called Nigeria? You know, America refers to itself as a melting pot. And that's because for you to become from many nations, one country, you know, you've got to drop some things and pick up some things. It's like marriage. Once again, let's go back to that metaphor of, you know, how do you build a happy marriage, and how, you know, how does a good marriage, you know, how do you sustain a good marriage? How do you build one? And it really is about the two people coming together and dropping a few things and picking up a few things until the two have become one. Okay. We have not yet become one because we have not intentionally worked at the project of building one Nigeria. I mean, we may have, you know, fought a civil war, and, you know, to keep Nigeria one is a task that must be done, but that was not the end of the task. It was probably somewhere in the middle. And I think that all the work that needed to be done to stitch us back together again, you know, to stitch us back together again, I don't think a lot of that work has been done. And we've got various proxies, you know, federal character, ethnic balancing, all kinds of jargon running around. But we have not applied ourselves to the ongoing tough work of building one nation, which is integral to us building our democracy. I don't think you can have one without the other. And that is why it is, I think, pertinent to say again that our diversity defines us as a country.
Right. That's very interesting. But why do you think that we have not consciously worked together to be one nation? Who would you say is responsible for that? The leadership, the average Nigerian, and their attitudes and things like that. For example, till tomorrow, I've lived in Lagos since 1973. I cannot run for any kind of office in Lagos. Maybe if I push councillor or local government chairman or something like that, and so on and so forth. I have to go back to Ewohimi, where I come from, to register, to do this, to do that. Even Okegwo, where my mother comes from, they accept me, in fairness to them, but I don't know if I try to become Oloke or become governor of Ondo State, they would really accept that. Why has this issue not been frontally tackled? What do you think?
Well, what you're saying is that we have based our electorability on origin rather than competence. And that's because we haven't been intentional about building our one nation. We keep on looping back to this deficiency, to this lacuna in our development. There's an intentionality that is required for you to build a successful life. To raise good children, to run a good company. I mean, these things don't happen by, default or, by chance. You look at our education system. We're not teaching children diversity and inclusion. We're not. I wasn't taught it. Luckily for me, because of the parents that I had, I happened to grow up with that mindset and those sets of practices. And so they are, if you like, intuitive to me at this point. But most people don't grow up like that. I mean, I remember, we had various cousins. In fact, I lived with my uncle once in a barracks and, in the military barracks, police barracks, et cetera, et cetera. There are people from all over the country. And you find children growing up speaking 3 or 4, 5 Nigerian languages, as their fathers or mothers are transferred from place to place and as they live in the barracks, and they get along perfectly well. Children are like that. But that is coincidence. That is chance. You can't build a country on that basis. That's a very small proportion of our entire population of, what was it just now? 212 million people. You've got to be intentional. It's got to be part of the curriculum. It has got to be taught and retaught and revisited. You look at the curriculum again, you pull it apart, you put it back together again with new pieces. We haven't taught diversity because we don't value our diversity. We don't recognize how important it is, how valuable it is, and we certainly don't celebrate our diversity. And these are all the things that you do in all these great organizations, the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, the Commonwealth Secretariat. There's a deliberateness. So I'd like to know, for example, who's losing sleep over this issue in Nigeria, anywhere in Nigeria, that call themselves a leader? Whose job is it to make sure that we learn how to live with one another? We learn how to be good to one another, that we don't just leave it to chance, as we've been doing for the better part of 60-something years. You can't do it like that. There's a deliberateness and an intentionality that is required. So putting something in the Constitution, for example, federal character, and then you have a federal character commission, it's purely numbers based. It's about quota systems and managing quota systems. And it's only, I would say, marginally effective at the federal level. It doesn't translate, it doesn't percolate down to the states or local government. You and I come from Edo State, hugely diverse and yet hugely similar. And luckily for us, since we had a referendum, we got the Midwest, et cetera, with Delta, we still identify with one another. There's an affinity amongst us, but it's not something you can take for granted. I mean, when you're discussing politics, even in our own state, and the issue of zoning comes up in various political parties, you can feel the tensions. And we are cousins, literally, we are cousins. So you can imagine what it's like for the rest of the country, north as opposed to south, southwest as opposed to southeast, south as opposed to middle belt. I mean, this is a hugely complex country. You can't just leave it to, the throw of a dice and expect that we're all going to be one big happy family. So we've been negligent. And I think that's what we're all suffering from now.
Yeah, so what are the losses that we're having? And what, in your opinion, do you think we should do as a people to celebrate our diversity and take advantage of it and make the best of it? Bearing in mind, I'll go back to that again, that the colonial masters left behind divide and rule. It is reputed, indirect rule. In fact, there was a book I read by a certain gentleman, I forget his name now, Harold Smith. Harold Smith. I don't know if you've read that.
No, I don't.
Harold Smith. Maybe I'll try and get you a copy.
That would be great.
British did to Nigeria and how they deliberately falsified our census figures and how they deliberately tried to ensure that we were divided amongst ourselves. What do we do? What do we do going forward?
Well, I'm a great person for agency. And I think our agency is, I think we've come of age. And look, if you look at the United Kingdom itself, it is not a United Kingdom. Okay, Scotland would head for the hills at the earliest opportunity if it could, and we saw that with Brexit. So would half of Ireland. Wales is, on the cusp. So really, what you're talking about in terms of the United Kingdom is England. And if you even go to England outside of London and the southeast, the fervence, if you like, for unity and one nation under God, it begins to wane the further away from London that you go. So I am not a great one for looking back and blaming someone else. I think we are what we were stitched together to be at that time. The big question for us now is, what have we done with what we were given? I don't think the British knew that we were going to be this great country. I know that we're still potentially great, but even as we are now, we're an amazing country, right? That's my obsession. We are an amazing country. Cut it whichever way you want. A lot of the pain that we're going through now is because we're not managing our amazing country, all our assets optimally, and we're suffering from the consequences of that. But I'm not sure that Britain is any better off than we are in terms of this angst over, are you Scots or are you Welsh or are you English or are you Irish? I think we've done a really good job of it compared to the hundreds of years of advance notice, if you like, that they've had relative to us. We're less than 100 years old. I think we beat ourselves up a great deal. Which, that there are pros and cons to that. We shouldn't be complacent, obviously, but my God, we shouldn't be so pessimistic that we don't see what we've accomplished as a country. The way we bounced back, if you like, from the Civil War is just amazing. What we did not do with that energy was rebuild our cohesion. Very deliberately build a cohesion that would be able to stand the shocks of the future, because there will be shocks. We're not in heaven yet. So I feel that there are things we can do. With this huge population, it should be a healthy and literate population countrywide, which means in terms of our resources, they have to be spread in such a way, harnessed in such a way that everybody gets a fair shot at a healthy, well-educated set of options in life. I think inclusiveness countrywide for everyone. You were saying you probably can't stand for any political office in Lagos. That's not a good trend. Hillary Clinton is a Chicagoan. She was married to a guy from Arkansas. She ran for office in New York. She's lived most of her life in Washington, D.C. There's no mystery about that. There's no alchemy about that. This is the way the country runs. This is the way our own country could run as well. And as a matter of fact, we were on our way there because Zik ran for office in Lagos, right? And he won. You didn't have to be Yoruba or come from Lagos in the 50s or 60s to win an election in Lagos. So how did we drift so far back? I mean, we had, so everybody blames the military now, but the fact of the matter is that we had military governors from all over the country serving all over the country, and the sky did not fall. So how is it that our politics has become so atavistic, so primitive, that if you don't come from my street, I will not vote for you? These are the things we need to very deliberately and conscientiously work at, so that we reverse a trend that does not augur well for the country, particularly not in terms of our democracy, which is a journey. Democracy is a journey. And this is about good governance. It is about democracy, very much so. So we cannot continue along this trajectory. We do have to reverse this trend so that I can run for office, wherever. And I think people will buck the trend. I think the public will buck the trend. I think that the politicians have abused the confidence placed in them since 1999. They have not used it well. In fact, they have used it badly. And I think the public is going to buck against that. And I think that the tide will turn, but it needs help. It needs help.
So let me go back to a question I usually ask. If you were president of Nigeria, what would you do to really, really transform this country? Which way would you take Nigeria? And what do you think we need to do at this point in time?
Well, some of it's obvious. I wouldn't do what our current boss is doing. I think, there's the power of optics. When you look at the leadership in the country, particularly at the federal level, I think that the common complaint now is that people are not seeing themselves, people from the South in particular, are not seeing themselves at the leadership levels. They're also not seeing themselves in terms of the bench strength. So over time, apart from people who are in leadership now, the likelihood, if we continue along this path, is that for the next few years, in terms of succession planning, this trend will continue. It doesn't augur well for the country. So if I were president, I would start there. I don't know how we got here in the first instance, because this was not our problem, at least not under the last administration. How it has become so bad now, really requires investigation and some pondering. So that's one thing I would do. Go back to federal character. As banal as federal character is, if you like, reductionist as it is to just numbers, but it served a purpose. It was better than nothing. So rather than lose that tiny foothold, we should try and build on it. And what we should build on it is accountability for diversity. This should not be allowed to happen again. There ought to be consequences. If we have a federal character commission, what is its purpose? What are its performance metrics? Who is losing sleep over this? Who is monitoring and evaluating this? And what are the consequences for non-performance? I mean, it's a management challenge as much as anything else. So we're talking about good governance and diversity. We're talking about manage a very complex, country of many nations, so that everybody gets a fair shot at equality.
Okay, somebody's asking that, should there be an agency for diversity in Nigeria? How do we manage that agency, or what do we think about it? And so on and so forth. And then I want you to also speak to the issue of, apart from managing our diversity, what has this present government done right? What have they done wrong? And how are we going to walk towards 2023? And I'll leave that possibly as my last question. And I'll allow Sonny to sort of take over, and anybody else who wants to ask a question. So Sonny, over to you after this. So what the question is, should we have an agency for diversity? And
well, we do have one.
We have
it's
one.
Just not doing a great job, and it doesn't have a great mandate. We do have one. We have the Federal Character Commission.
Okay.
I don't hear a lot about it. I don't know exactly who runs it and what this person is expected to do. I've never seen the creating statutes. I suppose one should look for it, but clearly it's not doing. It's not giving us what we need. It's not giving us, whether it's doing what it's supposed to do, I can't say, but it's not giving. So we do have an agency, but it's. I think that in terms of performance and outcomes, it's obviously inadequate. Okay, so we have an agency, and this is another thing. I mean, the creation of a multiplicity of agencies, layers and layers of agencies, gets us nowhere. First of all, I always say, what are we looking? What is the philosophy? What are we looking for when we say federal character? When we say ethnic balancing, etc., etc. Exactly, what is it that we're looking for as a country? Unless we articulate that as clearly as possible and capture it in a set of statutes that are applicable, by the way, not just at the federal level, but all the way down to the states and local government, then it's hot air. We will not just be where we are, we will be sliding backwards even more. So we have an agency. In my view, it is an inadequate agency. I mean, what is its communication strategy? What is its public information strategy? What is its communication strategy? What are its key success indicators? I mean, there's so many things. Key performance indicators, what are they? You don't have KPIs, they're not public, there are, to the best of my knowledge, there's no accountability, no consequences. What output are we expecting from an agency of that nature before we run off and create another host of agencies that will cost us money? We need a basic philosophy. What is it we're looking for from our diversity? We acknowledge that we have it, it's there, it's not going away. Even if we break into pieces, well, even at the state level, there's diversity. Even at the ward level, there's diversity. I mean, I don't know that breakup is our solution here, but what is it we're looking for? And how can we deliver it unto ourselves?
Okay, last question. What do we do towards 2023? And some people are lifting up their hands to ask questions. Sonny, I'll lead you to run with that. What do we do, my sister, towards 2023? What are your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of hopes. It takes a lot for me to be pessimistic. So I'm very optimistic about 2023. Simply not because of politicians necessarily, but because I suspect that the people are getting to a point where they're going to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I think that they're going to vote those questions in February 2023, exactly a year from now. I think they're going to say of the candidates, what's in it for us, not just for me individually in terms of maybe the 5,000 naira, et cetera, that is purported to go around to get people to vote. I don't know if that works everywhere, because I mean, what we saw in Edo State, I don't know how many 5,000 nairas you could give out to get the result we got. So, that's a moot point. But I think people are going to ask more, questions along the lines of, what are you really going to be held to account for? Not just these sweeping, I'm going to wave a magic wand and all your problems will be good. No, nobody's going to fall for that. We've all come of age now. I think this democracy is old enough for us to say, you didn't deliver the last time around, could you please step aside? Okay. I think people are going to ask for very concrete things, very specific things. And anybody standing up to be, asking people to count for them, to vote for them, will have to be able to give a reasonable timetable of delivery. Otherwise, now the net effect of failure from 2023 in terms of whoever we vote for will be really bad for democracy, because you don't want apathy in a developing country of this complexity. That would be very bad for us, very, very bad indeed. So my hope is that we get a slate of people running for office who actually intend to serve the people. I was reading a headline, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, where somebody was saying, anybody can lead Nigeria. Actually, no, it should not be the case anymore. It can't just be anybody. It had better be somebody who wants to serve Nigeria. That is what will qualify you to lead Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. This is Sonny, I guess.
Hi,
Pastor,
Sonny.
yeah, great. Thank you very much for the responses you provided so far. I hear you when you say that in the coming election, it's not just going to be all comers. People are not going to fall for the tricks of the politicians anymore. So what is informing your optimism that people are not going to fall? The people are poorer today than they were, in 1919. They are poorer than they were in 2015. If anything, they should be eager to take the money now more than ever before. So what class of people are you looking at that you are that optimistic that come 2023, the people are not going to fall for the same old tricks of the politicians?
Yeah, but how much does 5,000 naira buy you now? No, one of the reasons we're poorer today than we were then is because there's inflation. So how much is anybody going to be able to give anybody to make a difference to their lives that will entitle that person to the vote? What goes round comes round. This is the thing. What they've created here is a vicious cycle. And people are going to look at that 5,000 naira and say, you've got to be kidding. They probably will take the money, but they'll vote what they want. And so anybody who's sitting back thinking, I've got, bullion in my bed, under my mattress, I think they're wasting their time. I think the real challenge here is to get people to go out to vote at all, to get people to leave their homes, to go out and vote at all. And we've got 12 months in which to convince people that it will be worth their while, come rain or shine, to queue up and vote for whoever. Now, those whoever's have a responsibility and an opportunity within these 12 months, in my view, to sell themselves, not just with 5,000 naira, because it will only go so far. It's not going to go that. It was not going to go as far as it went in 2015, right? So to really say to the people, here's who I am. This is what I pledge to do for you in terms of service. If they don't convince the people, that two things are likely to happen. People might come out for the 5,000 naira, but they may not even vote at all, right? And some people will not even bother to come out for the 5,000 naira because it won't buy them anything. So if we are hit with apathy in 2023, that I think will be a very big problem, because silent people have a way of screaming. Silent people have a way of screaming that is ear-shattering. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Okay, I hear you. Great. Let's shift the conversation a bit from diversity to gender inclusion and women's rights and advocacy.
That's a diversity issue right there.
We saw the First Lady at the National Assembly, went there to canvass. Okay. Yeah, diversity and inclusion, Ituah. So we saw her at the National Assembly. She went to speak and advocate that we should have more women representation and all of that. In your view, do you think women representation is a factor that will promote our development in Nigeria, or they are underrepresentation now in various agencies? Is it hindering the progress we could potentially make as a nation? Or people that are saying that are just trying to get themselves into office? Because there's a school of thought that says that the elite women in cities are the people who are projecting and asking for, women inclusion because they want to get a free ticket to get to office. And the real women that are the receiving end of this whole argument are in the villages, and they are not, their status is not changing, in spite of all the advocacy that they are doing in the cities. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's interesting that real women are in the village and unreal women are in the towns. That's ridiculous.
No,
that's ridiculous.
We are talking about the people that are really oppressed. Yes. That's what they mean.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised at the forms of oppression that are going on in the urban areas, especially experienced by women. Look, more women will change the conversation to be more inclusive of women's issues. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But that alone will not change the quality of leadership in this country. Okay, I mean, if indeed there is capture by an elite, or there's class capture that excludes everybody, male and female, young and old, then whether you have men or women in whatever house of assembly or et cetera, that will not change the country. What you're looking for is a real change of the players and the systems. That's what you're looking for. So, as I say, I belong to various groups, and I always say to my sisters, etc., in some of these groups, there's no point us joining this bandwagon because, the wheels have fallen off. Okay. If we can get the kinds of men and women, and I emphasis on women, rural and urban, okay, who can change the conversation and the systems, and demand different processes so that more goes to more. More of the little we have in the country goes to more people equitably, then we've got a winning ticket, okay? It's not just about gender per se. It's also about thinking, the way people think, what people value. Are you coming to serve, or are you coming to be served? Okay, and that's something that cuts across gender. But what I do know is this, that the more conscientious women that you have in leadership, the higher the likelihood that the quality of the conversation at those levels will change to favor more women. I was reading something the other day, and a woman said, I know a man designed this kitchen. If you don't cook, you're probably not going to design a kitchen that is women friendly. And we're not asking for you to put a lipstick holder by the gas cooker. That's not the point. We're asking you to make sure that you build, structures for the kitchen that we can actually reach, because we have to do the cooking. That again is a metaphor for whether policy is delivering to women or not. There was a very interesting program I was involved in 1994 in South Africa. They'd almost finished it. And by the time I got to South Africa, they were collating the results. What do women want? How do we know what Nigerian women want, urban or rural? All women. How do we know what they want? And so anybody standing up there to say they want to represent women, to what extent do you know exactly what women want? And then there's sometimes is, a bifurcation between what people want and what they need. And then the other thing is what the country can afford. So there are at least 3 levels of inquiry that are required for a leader to be able to deliver to every section of our society. So to suggest that there are real women in the village and there are unreal women in it is just ridiculous. Women have different needs at different points in their lives, different parts of the country, different parts of if you like, different levels in society. But to what extent are any of those needs being met if women or are they likely to be met if women are not in on the conversation? What is the likelihood of that?
Maybe not, but let's stretch the conversation and see. So there are various issues affecting women. Like you rightly said, Nigeria is a nation that is hugely diverse, whether it is culturally, religiously, and we have seen that on the floor of the National Assembly, where they have tried to push women issue, and some people from some part of the country were starkly opposed to it. That this can happen. This can happen because women roles have been boxed as they were. Now, given our complexity, how can we manage that kind of thing? Some women from some part of the country, and indeed one part of the country is ready for women to take up anything, but in another part of the country, they are not quite ready yet, as we saw, by them shooting down some bills in the National Assembly and all of that. Although there's a marriage age that says that you have to be 18 to get married, but we're aware that in this country, some women are still married off at less than 18 and nothing happens to anybody.
Well, here's what I know. there's no point having laws that you're not prepared to enforce. It's something that we learned in year one, in day one of University of Lagos Law School, and this is common to you don't pass laws that are unenforceable or that you're not prepared to enforce. I also question very seriously, because I know the women that I work with in this country. I work with amazing women from all over the country, literally the length and breadth of this country, and exceptional women. And they're not all PhD holders. Some of them are literate, some of them are not. But they do know what they don't want, and they do know what they want, and they're prepared to fight for it. And this is where the rubber meets the road, that people are prepared to fight for these things. There will always be the conservatives and the reactionaries who are afraid of change. I mean, there's no other word for it, and who will resist it, sometimes to the death. But change is inevitable. If there's one thing that is a given, it is that change will occur. And there are enough people, male and female, I might add male and female, who are willing all over this country to fight for our progress across genders. The 18-year-old girls getting married, I mean, that's also a factor of lack of education. That's one of the problems. Not entirely, it's not the only problem, because people who are well educated, who should definitely know better, are committing these offenses, because they are offenses now that the laws have been passed. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't pass these laws, but it does mean that we should enforce them. And this is where civil society comes in. And a lot of these amazing women and very, very conscientious men are working from civil society. I mean, we were just looking at a case this morning in one of our groups. So police women are required to leave the force if unmarried and pregnant. Now, I know that men don't necessarily fall pregnant, but they do have children out of wedlock. I have not heard so far that this rule applies to men. Somebody was speaking this morning and, moralizing and saying, to prevent licentiousness, et cetera, et cetera. That has nothing to do with it. If it's a discriminatory regulation, it's a discriminatory regulation. If this is a regulation that applies only to one section of the police force, only to one gender, only to one creed, only to one ethnicity, only to one, then it is unconstitutional and needs to be expunged. That kind of regulation needs to be removed from the police conditions of service. So there are things like that. We're going to make incremental progress, but we will make progress. And it's blood, sweat, and tears. I can tell you, nothing is given from the oppressed to the oppressed. It is taken, and sometimes it is wrested, but it will change hands.
All right, thank you. I can see a lot of people raising their hands, and they have questions to ask, and maybe they have contributions to make. I think you've raised a very important issue about this police regulation. And I was also listening to a commentary that says it's not just the police, but it applies to all the armed forces and all the paramilitary agencies. And I dare say there are so many other laws also in our books that are like that. Now, the question is, are there agencies or NGOs that are deliberately seeking out practices and bylaws in our institutions that discriminate women and trying to highlight them and bring them up for constitutional amendment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I belong to one or two of them, and it is amazing work, and it is voluntary work, and it is painstaking work. And to some people, it is nitpicking work, but it is absolutely necessary. I don't know if people think that, unlike Rome, Nigeria will be built in a day. We're building a democracy here. Sometimes it seems as if we're standing on the sands of time, and we're losing more ground than we're gaining. But I don't know how else you build a democracy, but law by law by law, and with people who are just holding up there are people who have a vision for this country that far exceeds the optics in front of us now. I call these people Nigerians. These are the Nigerians, people who see that there is so much potential, so much promise, already so much to celebrate about this country that it would be anathema to let it fall apart or continue to fall back. Okay, these people are working day and night to make sure that they uncover ridiculous regulations like this, that they are contested. They're contested in the media. They're contested in our courts. People are willing to demonstrate. I mean, writing letters. We all have senators. Write a letter to your senator. Raise these issues. Make these issues issues. If you don't make them issues, they are non-issues. That is how democracy is built. It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. The last question before I begin to take on comments from the crowd is 2023 is coming, and there's the agitation that the presidency must rotate. The Southwest have had their shot, according to some people. The North have had their shot, and that is the turn of the Southeast now. So some people call it turn by turn Nigeria. What's your view? What's your take on that? Should the presidency necessarily rotate in that manner? And in 2022 specifically, what would you recommend or advise?
Well, I'd like to see it leave where it is. So that's a start. Where it goes from here is, up for the voters to decide, and I suppose for the political parties to nominate who they choose, and hopefully they will give us candidates, that we can believe in. But I'd certainly like to see it leave where it is now. There is no part of this country that is not well endowed with, talent, goodwill, capacity to carry the country forward. And I see no reason why it should be, the preserve of any one part of the country. So if it can leave where it is and go elsewhere, why not?
Okay. All right. All right. I guess if we want to stretch that argument also to the state level, will you recommend that the various states also circulate? And because you spoke about there's diversity in all the states,
Absolutely.
Local government. So will you recommend the same thing also for states?
I don't see why not. I mean, these are 4-year terms. We're not talking about, till kingdom come, for goodness sake. They're 4-year terms. And I think that if you want to build a completely inclusive society, everybody has to feel like, a full-fledged stakeholder. And if these opportunities to serve, emphasis on serve, become the preserve of just one section of any part of the country at whatever level we're talking about, it leaves everybody else out, disenchanted, and eventually, of course, disenfranchised. There's absolutely no need for it. There's capacity all over the country at every level for people who are willing to serve, to do so creditably for 4 years at a time. I mean, 4 years at a time. If you go back to the polls, and if the people think you've done a good job, maybe they'll give you another 4 years. And you know what? Maybe they won't. I mean, nobody is indispensable in this in this equation. So I am pretty open-minded that it's been where it is right now at the federal level long enough, and I think it's it will be a great thing for it, some spring cleaning, and let it leave there and go somewhere else. Where it goes will be up to the electorate, and of course, who the parties nominate for us to vote for.
All right, thank you very much. Before I come back to the next set of questions I have, we'll take a few comments and contributions, and maybe questions for you from the floor. We have Ofeha Organization for Equality. We have Isohe Moloko and Umokwede Okiria. We'll take those questions in that order from these 3 people. If it's a comment, if it's a question, unmute yourself, ask your question or make your comment, and then we'll take the 3 at once, and then you can respond to them. If you have a question, you can raise up your hand electronically so that you can have the opportunity. So go ahead. OFEKHR. Yeah.
Can I go on? This is Imokwede on the line.
Okay, you were the third in line, but the first person
All right,
is
okay.
muted.
All
But
right.
go ahead and ask your question since the first person is not ready. Go ahead, Imokwede.
All right. Good evening, good evening, everyone. My question is on the political party nomination process, where I know that voting alone does not guarantee us having good leadership. If all the political parties, their nominees are terrible people, terrible candidates, and we all vote and come out and vote, we are going to end up having a terrible person to lead the country. So my question is, how do we address the issue of having good and credible candidates across all the political parties, that at the end of the election process, we still have and change Nigeria for the better? Thank you.
All right, thank you. She will note that question. Is Organization for Equality, are you ready to ask your question now? If not, let's have Kofo Koka.
Hello. Hello, my name is Eso.
Okay.
Yeah, you asked me to speak second.
Okay, yeah.
Esohe Moloko, Dr. Esohe Moloko.
All right, doctor.
Sorry. At the UN. And okay. In 07 elections, we had a database at UNDP of all women who wanted to participate in politics. My question is this: everybody researching, I think that would have been a document that should have been continuously updated. So we have a knowledge and a feeling and, of people who want to participate in politics, women who want to participate in politics, who have the capacity, like my sister has said, because we came across a host of women in the rural areas, in the urban areas, but their one problem was this: they could not penetrate successfully into any political parties. If they came in, they needed the support of their husbands to be able to get in there. And if the support was not there, they needed the support of a godfather. If this continues, you can never get what you want. Because the women who are going into politics, who want to go into politics, they don't have the funding that the political parties demand of them. And the ones that have the funding will have to, have somebody they report to. How do we get over this? Because it's a real problem as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your question. I think she's noted it. If the Organization for Equality is not ready, then she'll go ahead and take those. Okay, sorry, Kofo Koka. Kofo, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Hi, Kofo.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a couple of questions, but if I can just ask two, I'll type the other one in the chat box, not to take too much time. I know in your presentation, you said that one of the ways we can achieve nation building and promote diversity is to include it in our schools. But I'd like to think that about 30% of Nigerians are already out of school. So my questions are mostly how to get those people. And my first question is that, do you have some suggestions on how we can do away with ethnic stereotypes in our society? And my second question, you might have addressed it, and please forgive me if I miss it, but it's what role should our families, our social institutions such as town and ethnic organizations, religious institutions, and other social institutions. What role should they play in promoting diversity and nation building? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Kofu.
Thank you. Those are great questions.
Go ahead, Mark.
Sure. Thanks, Sonny. Okay, so to Imokwede, my former PA, great to see you, Imokwede. Thanks for the question. How to influence party nominations? Well, the obvious thing is to join parties. And I'll say that in spite of Esohe's concern that it's very difficult to get into parties, you need husband's consent and support, etc., and money. But look, these parties are not monolithic. APC is less than 10 years old. It's in fact, it's as old as this second coming, first and second coming of this current administration. It's what, 9 years old, right? It'll probably be 10 years old maybe next year. Probably took 2 years to stitch it together and have it come up with, look, nothing is cast in stone. This is the great thing about a developing country. It is emergent. A lot of things are emergent. We're still in our evolutionary stage, okay? A lot of what can be done is yet to be done. And if we throw in the towel now, it's way, way, way too early. It's way too early. We're less than 100 years old. We should give ourselves, a break. We should cut ourselves some slack. Get into the fray, Imokwede, at the ward level. Join a party. And if that party doesn't work for you, look, the politicians do it all the time. Leave that party, join another one. But make sure that you are relevant, your voice is heard. And as far as women are concerned, and that database, only NGOs, I'm sure, I don't know who UNDP gave that money to, but only NGOs have the fervor, I can tell you that, have the fervor to keep that kind of database going. INEC deals with elections. It does not deal with party politics. I don't know that we have a body that deals with party politics. And maybe this is an agency that we do need. Maybe this is an agency that we do need that will help us to regulate some of the shenanigans that are going on at the party level now. We do definitely need a clearer regulatory framework so that the government is not controlling parties, but at least there are some clear guidelines as to what is acceptable and what is not. Look, in South Africa, women, the ANC women managed to push for a certain number of seats for women. And I know those conversations are going on in the various parties now, in various parts. I've been to a few meetings and I've been very impressed to hear the insistence, that women get involved. In fact, I'm supposed to be recruiting women for a particular group right now. I haven't been very successful, but maybe I should, refer to your database I saw here and see if any of those women on those lists are still interested in politics, or whether they have actually of their own initiative managed to tag on and tag along and finally work their way in. It's not easy even for men. I think we need to concede that. It's not easy, it's not cheap. Sure, they get maybe a fairer shot at it than we do, but it's not easy for anyone to get into politics in this country in a realistic sense. And then the other question is, well, most people have left school. What do you do about public education? Well, what did we do about COVID? We educated the public. We educated the public. That's what we did. And we need to do the same thing with our diversity and inclusion. During the Civil War, I think I was 12, 13 years old at the time, but I remember to keep Nigeria one is a task that must be done and things like that. Go on with one Nigeria. When did you last hear a positive jingle about diversity and our diversity and how important it is and how we should preserve it, et cetera, et cetera? So there's the public information and public education side. There's the curriculum side and what we should be doing to educate our children to be more inclusive and more respectful of diversity. But there is also the fact that ethnic stereotypes and ethnic stereotyping should be censured. The things that people say are absolutely shocking. I've worked in quite a few places, And I mean, if people said about Black people openly, for example, in the States, those people are thieves, and those people always lie. If you say things like that openly, you know, those are offenses. We have nothing like that in Nigeria. It's quite okay to abuse people from any other ethnicity, any way you like to talk, all kind. I mean, we are very free in speaking up against one another. I would like to hear some support for one another, some positive. You know, there's a method I developed. I remember I tried it out first of all in Ghana, and you know, took it to quite a few places all over the world. I did it in Vietnam once, and I had people write lists of, okay, so here's your bio. So you are Ashanti, you are Twi, you are Ewe, okay. What do you like about the Ewes, okay? And so the Ewes would like all these wonderful things about themselves, and the Twi's are doing the same, and the Ashantis and the Fantis, and everybody's writing all these wonderful things about themselves. And then another list. So you know, just fold your paper and down the other side, what is it you don't like about your own tribe? And so that took a little more time because, you know, of course, all of us are angels, and, you know, we are made of sugar and we're wonderful, and there's nothing like us in sliced bread. But people came up with lists of things they didn't exactly like about their own ethnicities, about their own tribes. And then I said, well, let's exchange. And you would be amazed at the conversations that came from a simple exercise like that. I did it in Vietnam, I did it in the Philippines, I've done it all over the place, okay? You would be amazed at how people, they don't have that sense of introspection until they are required to sit down and look at themselves through a lens and then exchange this piece of paper, and somebody else is looking at this lens and they're saying, yes, 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 the Ewes are the best cooks in the country, etc., etc. Hey, you mean you know this about yourselves? And you know, it is an amazing conversation. We do nothing like that in our country. We do nothing like that. You know, it's just like having, you're able to have children and you have 12 children and you just leave them out to dry. You leave them in the rain and you leave them in the sun. And if they can, find some food in the bush, maybe they'll eat and maybe they don't. And if they die, you bury them and maybe you don't. I mean, you can't run a diverse country like this in this, free-for-all manner with no management whatsoever, no strategy, no goals, no philosophy. I think the miracle is that we are intact at all. We are amazing people, and this is part of our resilience. How we manage to even live together without any process at all is just amazing. It's amazing to me. So that's what I think. Families have a role. It's that my family had a great role in raising us to see other people's perspective and to enjoy other people and to respect other people. All families have that role. The church has a great role. The mosques have great roles. So this is not just about children in school. It's about how adults see one another, how we speak of and speak to one another, how we regard one another. For example, if your son is going to marry someone from another ethnicity, what are you going to do? This is as practical. This is it. This is reality. What will you do? And that will tell you the kind of person that perhaps you are and shouldn't be. Let me stop there. Give other people a chance.
You've answered all the questions. So thank you very much, Ma, for the way you've rightly put it. It's very correct. We have all these challenges. Now 2023 is coming. What should we be doing towards setting an agenda for those that want to rule us in terms of diversity and inclusion, in terms of welding the nation more cohesively together? Because I remember, I grew up in the 70s. I didn't even know there was a civil war. I had absolutely no idea. I went to school with the Yorubas, with Hausas, Igbos. We were in school together. It was much later, maybe when I was in secondary school, I began to know that we fought a civil war. there was no inkling of that. The Igbos came back, they fused right into the system. And like you said, we kept hearing things like Gawan means go on with one Nigeria and all of those things. And the country was, I dare say, 70s. I mean, I was born in the North, I grew up there, and everything I am today, ABU Zaria was, I dare say, was as good as any of the other regional universities. So today, like you say, we speak about people from different parts of the country with so much, venom, as if they are not human beings. And you say abroad, that will absolutely not be allowed. But more importantly, what should we be doing to set an agenda for those aspiring to offices, whether it's at the state level or the national level, in terms of diversity and inclusion? What should we be demanding from them? Should we have a document to say, this is what we want you to implement, or these are the things that you must do to weld this nation together? And who will spearhead that effort? Are you willing to lead, or is your organization doing something in that regard already?
I think you've answered the question, Sunny, and really well. It has to be a demand. It has to be a demand, like, our fixing our economics. I mean, economically, we're not doing well at all. That will be a demand. This should equally be a demand. I don't know who has convinced us that our diversity is not defining. It is very defining. It took us into a civil war, and we did not use that civil war well. We lost all those lives. I mean, fortunately, Gowon had a spirit, and he said, no victor, no vanquished. But we shouldn't have said, no memories, no learning. Because tacitly, that's what we've done. No memories, of course, people remember. And the trouble is, of course, that if you don't formalize learning around challenges like that, if you don't formalize it, then it can be perverted. It can be hijacked. Okay, and this is exactly what has happened now. To get the true story of that civil war is almost like pulling national teeth. We were so afraid of it, we buried it, we swept it under the carpet, and now it's come back to haunt us. It's come back to haunt us. We need to tell the true story. We need to tell the true story, no holds barred, of how we got into that terrible civil war, how we wasted so many promising, wonderful lives in the course of building this country. Not to have used that experience. I mean, let's go back to the metaphor of marriage. If you go to a marriage counselor and it's been complete mayhem until you get to the counselor is going to make you look back and find out, how did you get here? What lessons have you learned? What have you got to start doing? What have you got to stop doing? I mean, there are certain things that are just trite. If we don't know our history, we condemn ourselves to repeating the worst of it. We're almost on the brink of that now. And what I think we need to demand of any candidate putting themselves forward for office in future is, how do you intend to make Nigeria one? We are many nations, legitimately so. There's nothing wrong with that. How do you make us one country? We need candidates who can answer that question with no prevarication and with absolute confidence.
I can answer that question.
I think we've got the Organization for Equality. Is that the?
Yes,
yeah, I think so.
Yes. My name is Tunde Akpelogo. I'm the chairman and the president of that organization residing in the UK. If you want to make Nigeria one, then you have to wind back the time of the clock. How do you do that? The 1999 Constitution is a fraud. The way we have set up states in Nigeria favored the North. The population census is a fraud. The Hausa Fulani people are the minority people. So if you look at the North, they are minority. If you look at the states, they are the majority. If you look at the numbers of people representing us in the National Assembly, they are the majority, consequently. So if you are not able to change the constitution, the states, the wards, the representation, then you cannot have one Nigeria going forward. I know this platform has always been bringing people on, telling us, go and register to vote. When you register to vote, who are you going? You can vote the best people in Nigeria, and yet you cannot change Nigeria from what it is. What it is now is that 99% of the ministers, those who are governing Nigeria, are from the north. Now they are saying blatantly that they own Nigeria. They own you, with your intelligence, with your education, with everything you have been telling us. They are saying that they own you. They will bring truckload, trailer load of people from the north to go and invade other people. How do you want to make Nigeria one? I'm suggesting to you that we can be a confederation, states. Let them, whatever. Let there be Yoruba nation, republic. Let there be other republics. These people who are Hausa, Fulani, or Fulani, Hausa, whatever they are, they have joined forces. They have ruled Nigeria for over 57 years. I grew up in the secondary school when there was war. I knew when the war started. I knew when the war ended. So I knew the war we fought then was fought in the bush, not in the city. So there was little destructions of buildings and infrastructures. Now there's going to be deeper, worse destructions coming up if they don't do anything now. You see, we are on this program to listen. There are many Yorubas who are here listening to your program because the way you present it. And then we want to hear how you want to go about repairing the damages, the tribal system of government in Nigeria. Nigeria is not going to work. Those who have the power now will not release the power, relinquish it. So what was the point? So the idea of making Nigeria work for us is to wind back the clock. Let there be proper population census. Let there be proper divisions of states. Let people manage their own territory. Let the Yorubas manage their territory. Let the Igbos manage their territories. Let the Deltas manage their territories. Let the Fulani Hausa manage their territories. That's the way to go forward as one nation. Right. Thank you.
I'd like to address that.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, if you've ever been a student of history, you will know that the Yorubas have fought many wars amongst themselves. Even as recent as the falling out of yes, exactly. Look, there is no silver bullet here. There is no, we're not in heaven yet. I keep on saying that. No matter how you slice and dice this country, you will meet some form of diversity, some form of difference, some form of dissimilarity or another. It is inevitable. We are human beings. So the test for us now is to learn how to manage that so that as a country, we can continue to move forward with our democracy. Is the 99 Constitution perfect? Of course not. You know how many amendments there have been to the American Constitution? That is what should happen to any constitution. It should be a living document. We've got to learn how to use law and order to change things in our country. Yes, we could consider a confederacy. We could do that. I lived in Switzerland for 2 years. It's a confederacy. In fact, I never even knew the name of the president, much to my shame. I remember my husband and I don't know, we had a problem, something about regulation about where you can live and, associations and things like that. And we took it up and we managed to change the law in our part of Geneva, just like that. Just like that. So yes, we could be a confederate. We could. Right now, we're not even really a federation. We've rolled back our federal nature, you know, a lot of the things that made us a federation, and I think we were moving in the right direction. We've lost some of that ground. We can recover it. There is no romance about being Yoruba and being one big happy family. It is not true. There is a long history. There's a long history, even recent history, of trouble amongst the Yorubas. And that is the case all over the country. And to look at the North and to say the Hausa Fulani as if they're monolithic, we're actually, in fact, giving power where it is not due. The situation in the North amongst the Hausa, and by the way, they no longer want to be called Hausa and Fulani. The Fulanis are the Fulanis and the Hausas are the Hausas. Even amongst the Fulanis, there are different kinds of Fulanis. Even amongst the Hausas, there are different kinds of Hausas. We oversimplify things when we create these monoliths, and they become bogeymen. They become bogeymen. It is not helpful. We need to be empirical. We need to have some historicity to what we're talking about. And we also need to be more optimistic about the capacity of this country to pick itself up and keep going in a more organized fashion. That's what we're asking for here.
Thank you very much. Before I ask my next set of questions, Anthony, you can take your question, but you are very spot on, Ma. I think you answered that question very well, and I believe that our elder, our senior brother from the organization, he has left. You got the kind of answer that you really wanted. I hope you got the message. Anthony.
Hello. Let's see, am I muted still? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think the previous speaker, Mr. Tunde, he has a very strong point. Let's not gloss over that point. When Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Ahmadu Bello, and all the other forces behind it, came together to put Nigeria together from our origins. The point he was making was that at that time, the various groups, yes, they may have their small problems within the groups. Even in families, there are problems. But the bottom line is, within that formation, which is the original formation of Nigeria, from history from whence we came, the different regions had control over their destiny. That is the point he's making, that no one should gloss over. What you have now is a fraudulent domination. And no matter how, that's why you have agitations. Because this utopian Nigeria we're calling for, charity begins at home. Your region, your area, should have control over their destiny first. I'm for one Nigeria. Of course, that's the best thing for us. But we have to recognize we're deceiving ourselves. If we think that what we have now, this arrangement, where some people are, rooted in taking advantage of this disparity of opinions and this, our various confusion. I'm not confused about where Nigeria is going. It's not going anywhere. We're borrowing like idiots. We have no education. The health infrastructure, we're dying. Forget about one or two little, the country is literally dying. Now, you talk about, for example, our financial situation. You hear about this ratio of the debt to GDP ratio. That's a fraud. If anybody ever earned a pen, you know that the hardest thing to do in life, one of the hardest things, is to have an income. Therefore, we should talk about income to debt ratio, income to GDP ratio. It has to have income in it. Any ratio that without the income in there, it's not a realistic ratio. So what am I saying? We are deceiving ourselves at so many levels. The failure of the country is staring us in the face. And we keep going around denying stuff. I mean, give me a break. What is this? So what the previous speaker was saying, we can't be smarter than Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Ahmadu Bello put together. We can't be smarter than them. This was what they put together. We deviated from that for whatever reason. And what he's saying, we ought to go back to that. Doesn't mean exactly back to that, but that has to be the premise of our survival. That way, Nigeria can become a superstar. But with what we got right now, the failures everywhere. Look everywhere, the country is crumbling. For the last 20 years, you have 4,000 megawatts of power. Give me a break, I'm an engineer. New York City has 11,000 megawatts of power, 8.5 million people. I mean, where are we going with this? It's not working. Nigeria is not working. Strikes all over the place. A kid goes to school today in the university, and he spends maybe 8 years for a 4-year course. When was that happening? Because the country is crumbling right around us. And we talk about one Nigeria. Yes, I'm for one Nigeria. In this format, the country's history is dead already. That's what I got to say. It's so obvious. I don't know what, I mean, give me a break. Where are we going with this? Where are we going? Those who are benefiting from this, they enjoy this confusion because our population is, for the most part, illiterate. So we can't think alike, like birds of a feather flock together to protect themselves. So they take advantage of this. If you look at the guys who, I'm going to stop in a minute, but I mean, I'm sick and tired of all this. We're gonna, we talk about Tinubu for president. What is this? I mean, this is a man who did not say a word when his people are being violated. Satanic silence. What's his game plan? And people are that, you talk about Yahya Bello for president. No, this is not about them. It's about the Nigerian people. If we're that uncivilized, we'll put them in power. And they will destroy the country at a faster rate than we've ever imagined. So this is where we are right now. The current administration is about religion, it's about ethnic group, it's about your region, and so on. In the appointments, you can see that. The current administration. Are we going to deny it? We don't know what's going on with that. And if anybody talks about ethnic and all that, say, you have big tribalism. No. The government is pointing us that direction. So the agitations are legitimate. You can try to suppress them. I can guarantee you one thing. They are not going to go away. It's just human nature. I look at the Soviet Union. It took 70 years for the Soviet Union to go up in smoke. Because it was a fraud.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.
Great contribution you have.
Thank you.
I identify with a lot of your feeling. I do. If I say that I wake up in the morning and I read the newspapers and I don't feel a sense of, how can I put it, frustration, anxiety, I would be deceiving myself. I have no illusions about, I've used the term we're on the brink. And 2023 is an opportunity for us to pull ourselves away from the brink. And this is the work that needs to be done between now and February next year. We need to educate ourselves. We talk about the public and, as if, these are people apart. But you'd be surprised. They may not be able to read the books that you and I read, et cetera, but people are very clear about what they expect from leadership. I mean, we saw that in Edo State last year. They're very clear. There's no confusion about the people's expectations. Sometimes those expectations may need managing because, of course, you have to pay tax, to fund public services, et cetera, and you talk about income, and therefore people do have to be able to generate income so that internally generated revenue can be applied to social and welfare services. So we know that wheel has to turn. We know that the 99th the Constitution is not serving us well. But even as deficient as that Constitution is, we've not been faithful to the spirit of that Constitution, particularly not in this last administration and some of the appointments that continue to baffle everyone. How can you be so lopsided? Okay, the optics are very bad. Okay. Nobody is arguing that we need a rethink, and perhaps we should be a confederacy. Maybe we should, and I've said that. Maybe we should, but I'm insistent that we are as scientific and as empirical and as rational as possible about our next few steps for these 12 months. Look, these 12 months are a window. They're a window. We are the only people who can shut that window against ourselves. Okay, so this is, and you say, give me a break, give us all a break. You know, we could all use a break here. You know, everybody in Nigeria needs a break. Okay, we need to know that we can and will do better. And that's the opportunity we have with the next 12 months. So don't switch off. I'm so grateful for your passion. And I don't mean to, you know, be paternalistic here, or, you know, no apple washing or anything like that. These are the Nigerians that will take us over, this time in this phase in our history. These are the Nigerians who will do it, the Nigerians who still care.
Thank you very much. As we begin to bring it home, I will take one more question then. I have 3 questions from the chat box, but let me let Ibrahim Pam ask his question. Ibrahim, unmute yourself.
Thanks very much, Sunny.
My brother Anthony, your passion is well.
Thanks, Sunny, and thanks very much, Mom, for a wonderful talk. Actually, I was going to sit this one out and not say anything, but I think the last couple of comments, they kind of legitimize everything you've said today, because you're talking about diversity defining Nigeria. I think how we manage that diversity is evident in the last 2 comments we got. It's a very tough call. I'm from the North, and I hear this xenophobia, and I don't mean all of the comments are xenophobic, but especially the first one really just rankles whenever I hear it, because to cast the North in that very undistinguished light, is very unhelpful. As you've said, there's nothing like Hausa Fulani. The division between the Hausa and the Fulani, if you knew the extent of it, you would probably try to re-educate yourself about what those ethnic groups are. So, you know, having schooled all of my adult life from childhood in the West, and having had to be on the defensive for so long, it's really tiresome. I think people need to re-educate themselves about where the problems are. There is as much diversity in the looting elite as there is in those of us who suffer. So to cast the entire ethnic group of the North, in the North as being the ones who are the problems of Nigeria, it's the road to Kigali. This is exactly how Rwanda fell apart. Let's be a bit more discreet. But thank you for the way you framed the discussion tonight. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks for your responses.
Thank you, and I appreciate your input greatly. Appreciate your input. And in terms of the road to Kigali, I actually was in 1998. I remember distinctly. I was in Entebbe and on the shores of Lake Victoria, and there were people on the river, on the lake, the banks of the lake, in shock because bodies were floating by. And I recall that when I was a girl in Benin City in 1966, perhaps 66, no, 67, we stopped eating fish because the Igboba River was also floating with bodies. And so, you know, if you haven't seen war, you can only imagine it. It's not Hollywood and it's not Nollywood, it's real. So when I say we're on the brink, we're pulling ourselves back from that brink, and we've got 12 months really to creditably and legitimately do everything we can to convince Nigerians that this country is viable. This country is viable. that there is room in this country for each and every one of us of whatever ethnicity, creed, or location in the country, urban or rural, north or south. Reductionism is very dangerous. I do think we should probably be a confederacy, to be honest. There is enough diversity, clearly, to justify that. I mean, if you look at Switzerland, Switzerland has Germans, French people, Flemish people, and Italians. And by the way, speaking of Italy, Northern Italians and Southern Italians do not get along. So we shouldn't behave as if we have invented diversity and its problems. This is a ubiquitous issue all over the world. Every country in some form or shape is dealing with this issue. Our challenge is, can we manage it better so that we actually keep this democracy on the road? We keep it on track. That's our challenge. That's really our challenge. And keeping it on track requires that we can fund infrastructure, we can fund the social and welfare sectors, so that our generation, by the way, we're making too many babies. There is no family planning program in this country. We are producing children we cannot provide for. We have not got a hope of providing for. We are not educating these children. We are not feeding these children properly. They do not get good medical health care. I mean, we're not clothing these children properly. So there are so many things that need to be addressed, that perhaps not just zoning will solve. We really need to sit down and say to ourselves, quo vadis? Where are we headed? Where are we going? I'm not sure when this draws to a close, Sunny. Give us a sense of.
Yeah, we are rounding up now. Actually,
okay.
Okay. Just to take the last few comments.
All right.
Thank you very much for the way you have answered and provided answers to the questions and concerns that have been raised. So Auntie Tolu, she's on the platform. She said the Igbos were traumatized when they came back after the Civil War. Auntie, that may have been true. I just shared my own view. I mean, I was too young to notice whether the adults were traumatized or not. I went to school with the kids who were obviously, just normal. So you may be right. I'm not doubting that. Kofo also had a question for you. She spoke about the girl child being used for domestic help, child trafficking, and all of that kind of effort. That she wants to know if there's any work being done in that space. What's your view about this girl child trafficking, using them for domestic work? And Shade asked a question about the third force. The third force, what's your view on the third force?
What's that? What's the third force?
So we have the PDP and the APC as the dominant political parties. So come 2023, do you think we need a third force, or should we just still wait for APC and PDP to give us a candidate? What do you think? Should we work towards producing a third force? So those are the three questions that came on the chat. And then to crown it all, and I know that Pastor asked you this earlier on, if you were president of Nigeria, what would you do differently? Thank you.
I think I've answered that. Let's see if we can give some time to these other questions. Yes. Especially child trafficking. It's not just the girl child, even though obviously that's probably the more vulnerable of the two genders. There are a lot of NGOs that are working on this, definitely. The key, of course, is number one, to have a law that requires every child to be in school up to a certain level. Okay, so that it's a law, and that there are consequences for this, for the infringement, for violating this law, right? Violating this law, and therefore that the law is enforceable. Okay, all over the country. We're running a country here. We're trying to run a country here. I mean, Shade is asking the question, and I'm sure that's my good friend Shade Fashedini asking about a third force. APC and PDP are not the only political parties in Nigeria. I don't know if we're aware of that. And one of the tasks that I know that is underway in the country now is an attempt to form coalitions amongst these other parties, possibly to join one or the other of these parties or not, as the case may be. So these are some of the negotiations that are going on. There is a tremendous amount of work going on in the country around the politics and processes and systems, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, people who want to run for office are not sitting on the fence. There's a lot of work that's going on. My beef, frankly, is not that level of activity, because I think these people know how to organize themselves. What I'm concerned about is Joe and Joanna Public. How do we involve the public in this push towards 2023 so that it's not just party politics, but it is the Nigerian democracy? That, for me, is the pressing issue for the next 12 months. You know, it's not just, you know, getting out the vote, which is extremely important, but it's also about our people engaging with the democracy on a continuous basis. As constructively as possible. You know, this is the thing I was saying about the silent scream, you know, is ear-shattering. We cannot obviously continue like this. I mean, you can feel the levels of confusion and frustration, passion, et cetera, et cetera. How do we channel this? And it's not just amongst the intelligentsia or people who have degrees or people who live in cities, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody is concerned for and about the country and its people. That is the truth. I don't believe that there's more than a handful of people, metaphorically speaking, that don't care about where we've gotten ourselves to and how we dig ourselves out of this hole. I mean, we definitely are on the brink. So I don't know that there's a Nigerian, you know, a clear-thinking Nigerian who's not concerned about this. And so to reduce everyone to, I will sell my vote, I will buy my vote, I think we're more complex than that, you know. I definitely think that there's more goodwill and definitely more intelligence across this country than just that. And we have a year within which to build on the best of the country so that we get good leaders the next time around. So in terms of a third force, there's no question. I mean, these are not the only political parties in the country. Coalitions are being negotiated as we speak. In terms of child trafficking, we need to get children into school. If we can give each child a good meal, keep their inoculations going, make sure that their medical records are, you know, are kept intact and that we are monitoring them, you know, the anthropological progress, et cetera, scholastically, et cetera, and that parents actually parent their children. I think parents are stressed and overwhelmed. They're having too many children. They're having them too early, they're having them too frequently, they're having too many of them, and they're having them too late. They're continuing. That span of childbearing for the average Nigerian woman is ridiculous. It's more than 25 years. Women are having children from the ages of 16 to 40 something. Come on. It's impossible. It's impossible. Our population is multiplying at an exponential rate. So this is not just a question about, you know, gender equity and, you know, and North and South, et cetera, et cetera. We will implode if we don't sit up and manage our country much better and in a fashion that we deserve ourselves. I'm going to stop here, Sunny. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and for giving me the opportunity you know, to speak my mind.
Yes.
About Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Okay, just before you go, Ma, I have two people that I would just like to, who would definitely stop on the top of the hour. I have Ayo Aladegbemi and Yusuf Pam. I don't know if Yusuf Pam is still on the platform. Yeah, please, you have just a minute to quickly make your comment or ask your question so that she can take it. I just wanted to take everybody and just make sure so that we can run.
Is that Ayo?
You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes.
Aladegbami, yeah?
Okay. I really appreciate this meeting.
Aladegbami, yeah.
Aladegbami, Ayo, Aladegbami. I just want to say some few things. I think Many of us we live in our own bubbles. And why am I saying this? I've been on this issue for a long time, since I was even young. I remember 1999, trying to gather friends together. Let's get into politics and all that. I know what we went through then, in which the older people will tell you right in the ward level that, oh, you guys are young, right? Oh, it's not your time, you have to wait for your time. And why am I saying this? Catapulting right now, as I speak right now, the same thing is still going on. The elder ones are not ready to leave, right? And if you look at the age bracket, people don't get sensitive about the country until they are getting to their midlife. And as at that time, it's like they want to retire from their real professional life into politics. And that's why you see people from age of like voting age, let's just say even 18, out to like late 30s, they don't want to get, look, I've met a lot of young people, they've given up. I've heard so much get together, let's do this, try to encourage people. The younger ones have given up. I'm just telling you the truth. So when you see people like Tinubu come up, when you see people like, you just name them, people that you felt like, oh, they should not. That is what the society in Nigeria wants. Is the reality of the people on ground. Many of us were educated, we do not vote. I will say it over and over, we don't. I have so many friends, they don't vote. Even in Lagos, people will stay in their house, the polling booth will be in front of their house. They'll be watching TV, they're watching soccer. I'm talking about able men, able women, and people working class. We don't vote. And those touts that we laugh at on the streets, they are the ones that decide to vote. When you look at the Nigerian population, look at the vote that makes the president, look at the vote. It doesn't make sense. We don't vote and we complain all day. So why am I saying this? Irrespective of how we feel, I understand what you talked upon is really, really important and cogent. The truth is this. Number one, the Constitution does not work for anybody. But
right. So
within the Constitution,
just 2 minutes, because we are rounding up. If you can just
okay. I just want to touch different places, because I think the idea is this: we all need to come together and make Nigeria work. I think with the present Constitution, the only thing we can do is to empower the local government. Let the local government be independent, supply people all what they need, and I think Nigeria can pick up from there. But aside from that, there's too many layers that we can start peeling, and we will not end this talk. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
She will address that. Yusuf Pam, sorry, I saw your hand earlier on, and I want to believe you are still on the platform. If you are here, you can unmute yourself and speak to the topic. Yusuf Pam.
And I have a friend online, Ose.
Okay.
From all the way from Hollywood.
All right. Okay. Ose, go ahead and ask. Let me just take that. Ose, unmute yourself. Yusuf, if you are still there, I'm waiting, but Ose can go ahead and unmute him.
Yeah.
Hi, Auntie. This is Ose. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, guys. How are you?
Great. Fine. Good job. I think this is great. I just wanted to contribute. I try not to speak at these things, but I wanted to say something because I think it's a great forum. I think the problem we have sometimes in Nigeria is we tend to over-dramatize and don't really act on the solutions that we know is there. Now, a democracy itself is a big scam that the elites foisted on the people, because there are groups of people and interests that give you two people and tell you pick one, But there's a way to game it, and Nigeria has gone through this before. Everybody wants to go to Abuja, wants to be in the Senate or in the House. But why don't people, like people on this platform, like other people, just fight and start from the ward level as councillors? Because when you're a councillor, you're in charge of a few streets. The people know who you are. They can come to you. And you know the chairman of the local government. When the fire is burning under your butt, you go to the chairman, and he knows, that way nothing gets hijacked. That's the way I think Nigeria was founded, And it happened before. There was a gentleman, General Ituah. He hijacked the political system in Nigeria because he built a grassroots political system that they still use sometimes till today. So why are people not trying to do that? People put money together to elect somebody to go to the House of Assembly or the House of Representatives. Why don't we have models? Like, this is a model local government in Nigeria. A few models. And then you start building from that instead of trying to change what we know we cannot change. We complain about Nigeria. What of our local government? What of our towns? If we start there, and if, for instance, in one state, half of the local government are independent, or they don't owe their allegiance to one godfather or money bag, the governor will behave.
Olu. Patrick.
So I think we need to put our words into action. Like, for next year, trying to influence who becomes president or governor. Maybe that's not what you do. Maybe you want to go to who becomes the local government chairman, because those people influence who becomes commissioner. If your governor knows that things are going well somewhere, maybe he needs to do a rethink. Anyway, I know time's going. I just want to say great job, Auntie, and I will just go away now. Thank you.
All right.
Don't go away. Don't go away. Don't be a stranger. Look, I want to combine the IO, the ward level politics, empower local government, with what Ose has just said. Let's act on solutions, be a councillor, be a grassroots politician. He's absolutely right. I was on channels a few months ago, I can't remember exactly when now. And here's what's clear, something I said at the time, and I still feel very strongly about it. Between big government and the individual, you have community. That space called community is available to each and every one of us. Each and every one of us. Who sweeps our streets? Who sweeps our compounds? Who keeps our markets clean? Who cares about our primary health care centers? If we bring governance to the level of the grassroots, which is what I think these young men have both said, Ayo and Ose, right? It's as a matter of fact, I belong to a group that's working on local government. So it's one of the things, I think myself and Pastor Ituah belong to that group, working on local government, empowering local government, and the experiment, of course, the laboratory is in Edo State, because we have, a governor who cares, that we can approach. Let's work on local government. And from local government, you go down to the ward level. This thing I say, I don't know if we expect Nigeria to be built in a day. It will not be. It's going to continue to take blood, sweat, and tears, shovelful by shovelful, to build this thing called a country from many nations. So if we did have a model of grassroots politics, which, by the way, has worked in China. The Indians have their panchayats, which are village level and local level leadership groups. Now they have requirements that a certain percentage must be female. There is no magic to this. It takes blood, sweat, and tears every day from the grassroots upwards. Of course, everybody wants to be a senator. I mean, look at the salaries. Of course, everybody wants to be, a member of the House and a member of this and a member of that. Some of them have risen through the ranks. A handful of them have risen through the ranks. But we do need more activity at the community level between the individual who feels very impotent, powerless, and big government, which seems inaccessible and monolithic. There is this reality that we all dwell in called community. What are we doing with that space? Who are we within that space? And finally, I think we had all better vote. Let me stop there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak my mind.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Auntie. I think you have done great justice. We really appreciate your time. Taking about 2 hours, and I really want to thank everybody for joining this platform. We have our regulars. If this is your first time of joining this platform, we are the African Leadership Group, the Nigerian Leadership Series. They are showing the next guest we are going to be having next week. He's going to be speaking about African leadership challenges, and that person will be Captain Blade. I'm sure many of you see him. He's a political analyst, always speaking on security matters. So we'll be having him next week to talk about the challenges of leadership in Africa. So like I was saying, our group is a group that is devoted to good governance across all levels, from the local government right through to the state to the top, and then the leadership selection process. We are very committed to ensuring that the right people are put forward, and we're doing a lot of things behind the scene. This particular platform is just one of the things we do to bring experienced people like our auntie that spoke today, and they talk about various issues that affect us. So we truly appreciate everyone that has been part of this program. Thank you very much for sharing your evening with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week, Thursday, the same time. Auntie, thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the remaining evening and the rest of the week. And bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Right.
My best
Thank
to
you.
Pastor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. He will hear. He will hear. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being part of the program. Yeah. Auntie Olabamibo, I greet you. I see you all the time sitting quietly and always listening. God bless you, ma. Ibrahim Pam, how are you? Where is Ebon Yusuf? He didn't stay to ask his question again. Why?
Thank you very much. God bless you all. See you again next week.